Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight's town hall. We have Judge Miller tonight, candidate for Superior Court Judge, Fulton County. My name is Rashard Snellings. I am with the South Fulton Coalition. And a little bit about the coalition. Our mission, the mission of the South Fulton Coalition is to implement action programs for the continued improvement, accountability, and integrity of the city of South Fulton, as well as Fulton County government and as elected officials. Our purpose is to preserve and enhance our community and hold our leaders accountable and ensure that the city of South Fulton and Fulton County government is a wonderful place to live, dine, work, shop, visit, and play. Tonight, our moderator will be Jareem Sharp. And Jareem, I would like to pass it over to you. You have the floor. Please proceed. Thank you.
Hey everyone. So first and foremost, thank everyone for joining us this evening for tonight's forum. I'm just really so grateful for many of the people that are even in the background now, such as Ron Booth, also Rashard Snellings, that are here to make this happen. I always say, as I get older, I realize that there are really 100 things that we could be doing and places that we could be. So again, I thank everyone for just taking the time to be here today. As a small request, before we really get started, I would like for everyone to take just about 30 seconds to a minute just to share this meeting with as many neighbors and as many people as you can through text message, through social media, maybe it's sending a quick email, but do share this with as many people as possible. Engagement and participation are major keys to a working democracy. So again, for the next 30 seconds, send someone a direct message, let people know that this conversation is happening tonight with the candidates for Fulton County Superior Judge. My name is Jareem Sharp. I'm a public affairs professional based here in the metropolitan Atlanta area. I've had the privilege of serving on various boards, such as the Atlanta Pre-Arrest Diversion Board, also known as PAD, the Woodruff Park Committee, and I've also had the privilege of working for a city councilor in Atlanta. Without taking too much more time, I want to take a second to introduce tonight's candidate, Ms. Shalonda Miller, Judge Shalonda Miller.
Good evening, everyone. That is correct. I am Judge Shalonda Miller. I am running for Fulton County Superior Court Judge, but I am currently a juvenile court judge. And the basic premise of my campaign is very simple. Experience matters. I am a current juvenile court judge, have served in a judicial capacity for more than 3 years. I started as a magistrate court judge, sitting by designation in both state and superior courts. So I have the unique experience of having served in every trial court in Fulton County. Prior to joining the juvenile court bench full time, I was the deputy attorney for litigation in the city of Atlanta, which included litigation, anything you can think of, we did in the city of Atlanta: employment litigation, nuisance, trip and fall, slip and fall on city property, all the things that a city government would cover, we represented the city in. Prior to that, I was advice and counsel for both the city of Atlanta as well as Fulton County government for more than 9 years. So in-house counsel for those entities. So I'm intimately familiar with the types of issues that come up in our communities and find themselves before our superior courts. Started my legal career in private practice doing litigation, mostly commercial litigation, small business, mid-sized business litigation with some employment matters and a little bit of malpractice and plaintiff side work. Prior to going to law school, I was a business consultant with Ernst & Young based out of Atlanta for more than 6 years. So I have a very diverse and well-rounded experience from a legal and professional perspective. And that is important because the Superior Court handles a lot of different matters. So we often think about criminal matters. That's just one aspect of what the Superior Court handles. It handles our most serious criminal matters. So anything more than a year, that the punishment could be more than a year up to and including life in prison or death. So that's from a criminal perspective, but it also handles civil cases. So a lot of those things that I was talking about, we handled from a litigation, from the attorney perspective in the city of Atlanta, all those civil things, employment matters, contract disputes, housing disputes, land disputes. And then Superior Court is also the only place where you can have family law disputes. So custody matters, divorce, modifications of agreements between parents with regard to children. So all that comes before the Superior Court. And then uniquely for Fulton County Superior Court, because this is the seat of government, this is the only place that you can sue a state or a state agency. So if you have a dispute with the state, you have to come to the Fulton County Superior Court. So I outline all of that experience and what the court does, because I have it. I have been serving as a judge, as a lawyer, and as a community member, my fellow community members here in Fulton County for more than 20 years. And I am prepared to elevate to the Superior Court and continue my service. In contrast, my opponent has no experience. He was appointed to this bench by our governor less than 9 months ago, and he literally had 0 years of experience. And this is not a job. These are not issues. I named just some of the issues, but these are not issues that you should be learning on the job. These are things that require a solid legal foundation, but also a solid community foundation, so that you know the things that are actually happening in our communities to what the root causes are of some of these issues, so that those things can be rooted out and hopefully corrected, as opposed to just kind of winging it. This is not a let's wing it, learn on the job kind of job. And so I am Shalonda Miller. I'm running for Fulton County Superior Court Judge, and I'm asking for your vote. Early voting has started. The last day to vote early is this Friday. May 20th is when early voting ends. So you can vote tomorrow and Friday. And then election day is May 24th. And we need everybody to get out and vote. Take 5 or 6 or 10 people with you and get all the way to the bottom of the ballot, because judges are all the way at the end. And it's too important to our community to have someone who is learning on the job. Experience does matter. It is important to facing the challenges that we have ahead of us. And I am the experienced candidate. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I definitely even learned a lot myself about you. I know that I don't see, I won't go to the chat yet for questions. I'll kind of take a second to ask one question that I have. If you could take it back just a little bit. I know that there's a lot of different judges. There's Superior Court, there's Juvenile Court. Could you maybe take a little bit of time just to really break that down a little bit in the differences?
Absolutely. So juvenile court think about family court, and we don't call it criminal in juvenile court, we call it delinquency perspective. Anything under that a person would do that would be a crime, but they are under 17. So juvenile handles those matters. And then when we have families who are struggling to provide and care for their children or have more severe, serious issues, those things come before the juvenile court. Juvenile court is a division of the Superior Court. So we hear all of the same types of matters, but our jurisdiction is limited to families and folks 17 and under. So that's juvenile court. Superior Court is our highest trial court in Georgia. And like I said, here's the most serious of matters. So you think about felony crimes, high dollar value civil issues. State court is just below Superior Court, and it handles anything 15,000 and above and any misdemeanor criminal matters. So a year or less would be the punishment in misdemeanor cases. And then you have Magistrate Court. Magistrate Court is kind of the people's court. Anything under $15,000 in a civil matter, you're talking about county ordinance violations, and And magistrate court judges sit by designation in state and superior court in Fulton County. So magistrate courts also hear arrest warrants, search warrants, those types of things, the first bond opportunities happen at the magistrate court level. And that is our state court system. And don't get that confused though, because we have municipal courts too. And so municipal courts are separate from the state courts, and they basically oversee county ordinance violations and traffic matters. So hopefully that helped a little bit. We have a good tiered system here in Georgia. You're muted, Mr. Sharp.
So sorry. So there's about 5 or 6 different courts.
Right.
And everyone is working together and doing a little bit of different things at the same time.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And tell me, I know that you are currently at Juvenile Court. Tell me more if you can, or tell us more. I know I'm super interested now. Tell us more a little bit about Superior Court, and maybe how does Superior Court work with, let's say, a city? At what point would, let's say, a regular citizen end up in a Superior Court?
Well, thank you for that question, Mr. Sharp, because it is important. So if you had a matter, so superior courts are the only courts of equity. And that means when the remedy is not money or property, it's not a thing that is tangible, but it's when you're trying to stop somebody. So you think about your neighbor is trying to cut down a tree that's on in both of y'all's yard. You might want to, what we call enjoin or stop them from cutting down the tree. You'd come to Superior Court. If you have an issue, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, with a state or a state agency. So I don't know. It's a popular thing, election matters. So maybe your precinct isn't properly equipped. That might be something that you bring in Superior Court. So it is a court of equity. So you're trying to either stop somebody from doing something or force the state agency to do something that you feel like they should be doing, that they're not. You'd find yourself in Superior Court. And then there are other instances, like I said, if you were directly suing the state or a state agency, that you might also find yourself in Superior Court as well.
Thank you for that. And I know that you mentioned a lot about experience and why that matters. Can you maybe speak on to why is experience? I know you spoke on a little bit, but could you dive a little bit deeper into why is experience at being a judge so important?
Yeah, no, it is a good question, because I think people don't really know. They don't know their judges until they're in front of their judges. But I want people to take a moment and think about it. Anything of any consequence, if we can't agree on it, a judge eventually decides. And you want someone with some experience to help facilitate justice and fairness. We talk a lot about that, but what does it mean? To me, and I will preface this by saying I have drank all the Kool-Aid. I became a lawyer because I believe in our system. I believe that our system, when used appropriately and with the right inputs from the community, including our churches and activists, our ambassadors for justice, like our law enforcement officers, our lawyers, and our judges, when used correctly, our system changes society and lives. And the perfect example of that is what got me hooked, the civil rights movement. When I was a little kid, my dad had us learn. So before there was all this stuff about what we're learning in school, my dad taught us at home about our history, Black history, and some of the struggles that we faced in our country. And one of the things he had us watch was Eyes on the Prize. And if you haven't watched it, it is on Netflix. Do it, watch it. I'm watching it now with my 9-year-old just turned 10. I was going to say my 9 and 11-year-old, but we started when she was 9. We started watching that together as a family. because it will show you church leaders, community leaders, lawyers, and very, very courageous judges all came together to strategically end segregation in the South. It didn't happen by chance. It was a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of deliberate use of our legal system to move our society forward. And so I believe in that. And I believe we have to have the right people in place, people who are interested in everyone having due process of the law. And to me, that means that everybody gets seen, everybody is heard, that we don't make assumptions based on how people look or how people present themselves, but we really get to the underlying circumstances and facts that brought someone before the court, and then apply the law so that we can get the most fair and just outcomes. So I say all that because that is the perspective that I bring with me to my legal career and to my opportunity to serve as a judge. And it has only heightened my belief as a juvenile court judge, because juvenile court is a rehabilitative court. We are designed to try to identify the root causes of issues for a young person and within a family, and to find community support to correct those things. And so, for example, I'm talking about educational deficiencies. So does a young person need tutoring? Do they need to catch up? They need credit recovery. Those are things that we look to do. Job training, certifications. We work with our unions in something called Youth Build so that our young people can finish high school or get their GED while also getting a certification. So when they're done, they have a job waiting for them. We're also talking about mental health concerns. Does the young person or someone in the family need mental health assistance? Healthcare is an issue, and mental health is a part of the healthcare system. And not everyone has ready and available access to therapists and their medication on a regular basis. And so, whereas we sometimes take that for granted, these are not things that in the juvenile court we take for granted. And so we are trying to identify those root causes of behavior and find solutions within our community to fortify those families and those young people so that at the end of the day, we have strong children who can contribute to society, which makes strong families and thriving communities. And so that is the perspective we work from in juvenile court. And I've seen it work. It doesn't always work. I wish it did. But when we can get to those root underlying causes and address them, oftentimes we are able to see a change in circumstances. And that is important as I move up to Superior Court, because you talked about it, the diversion program. There are opportunities to continue this type of work at a Superior Court level through our accountability courts, through pretrial diversion programs, where instead of our first inclination being detention or incarceration, what we are looking at is what are the real causes? And let's all as a community get behind those so that we can build up people, make better people who are able to thrive in our communities. Because it's data proven, if people have solid housing, can provide for themselves, eat, put a roof over their head, they are less likely to commit a crime in the first place, but certainly less likely to reoffend. And that keeps folks out of prisons, and that makes our communities as a whole stronger. That was a long answer, Mr. Sharp.
What though? Broke that down, and I appreciate, and I think everyone listening can really appreciate, because my question honestly was more about just the professional experience, but what I really loved is that you really brought in even that personal experience, and they both matter. and across all and in every industry, every job. So I think I really appreciate that you were really able to share just that personal experience also and why that matters. So thank you very much for that super long but great informative answer.
I'll be more brief. I'll be more brief. I'm a litigator by nature.
Okay,
So
okay.
I'm, as I say to people all the time, I'm a recovering litigator. I can talk.
Well, you have for tonight again. Thank you for being here. We have some questions. I think Rashard, did you have some? I want to jump in for a second.
Yeah, I have some questions. So the first question is, what would you say to someone young that doesn't understand why they should vote for you?
Hmm. Uh-huh. There are a lot of things that I would say about voting. But if you have to have a personal reason why to vote, you can look at what's happening. You can look around over the last couple of years, how judges have been front and center in some of these very high profile cases. We just had a Supreme Court justice confirmation. You can look at that. And then just in the last week or so, this potential ruling that's coming down from the United States Supreme Court, judges matter. Judges matter. And when you're talking about your day-to-day life and experience, you want a judge who is going to, one, know the law, know procedurally how to move a case along so that you get some efficient resolution to your matters. But you also want a judge who is going to see you. To me, the most important part of due process is that people are seen and heard, and that they understand what is going on in the courtroom. It's hard to really have your day in court. One, if everybody's talking all this legalese, but two, nobody is taking the time to understand your perspective and what got you to the court today. Because whatever the issue was, that one thing is not the whole of your story. And so you want a judge that's going to do that. And I can't commit to how I will rule on anything, but I can commit to that. I can commit to making every effort to make sure my courtroom is accessible, that I am transparent and efficient, and that I see you when you come before the court, and I take the time to hear what brought us to this moment so that we can facilitate the most just and fair outcome.
Thank you so much. And then there was a second question. This is a direct question that was sent to us. We have seen the stories on TV about the Innocence Project where inmates have been exonerated after prosecution and in many instances, lengthy jail time served. How have these cases impacted your judicial philosophy?
I don't know that those cases in particular, because I'll say this, when I was in law school, in criminal law, and we take criminal law, I believe it's our second semester, first year. The first thing my professor said to me, and I'm just saying what he said. I'm not saying this is my opinion, and maybe it is, but it is better to have 1,000 guilty people on the street than one innocent person behind bars. Let that sit on you. That is what coming into law, that is what I received, like one of the very first things. And that is because that is the way our system is designed to work. Our system is not designed to simply detain. I hope that answers that question. without getting into the details of it, because I can't, as a judge, get into all the details of it, but it is important to me that our system work the way it is designed. And I think that's important for all of us, that it does.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, just for the edification of the public, can you just let us know any cases, any type of questions that you cannot answer or respond to?
So as a judge, we are not supposed to take policy or legislative positions, which is correct, right? Our system is designed where we have people who make legislative decisions, policy decisions, and then we sit in another area in order to make sure that none of those violate our rights, our constitutional rights. So I can't talk about those things because I'm supposed to be separate and apart from those parts of our government that does that. And then also anything that might be before me, like any actual factual things that might come before me, those are hard because we also, as judges, must be impartial and unbiased. Our personal feelings, our personal views are not to impact the work that we do in that courtroom. And so, questions about how I might actually rule or what I might actually do, those are things that I wouldn't be able to answer. And that's also fair because each individual is different. And like I said, I can commit myself to seeing the person before me and hearing the case before me.
Thank you so much. Jermaine, back to you.
Yes, one question. There's a question in the chat, but I would like to ask this one for a second because I think I heard housing somewhere in this. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about kind of housing, the housing system? Of course, there are evictions. There's so many things happening around housing. Can you maybe just take a moment to just talk a little bit about housing and how that works in the court system, Georgia laws, and you can start really in any place. It's a pretty broad question.
Yeah, housing is, we know this. Housing is a huge issue, and it is becoming the source of a lot of family disruption in our courts, because one of the elements of being able to care for a child is being able to properly house a child, right? And people don't think about it all the time. And that's why I thank God for this opportunity to serve on the juvenile court, because it has certainly given me a direct window into some issues that I might not have appreciated from every perspective, and housing is one of them. You think about the disruption of being displaced from your home for a child. It usually interrupts school. It is a trauma. And if you cannot stay with your family during that time, so, if you have to go live with a relative and your mom goes live with somebody else and your brother or sister goes and lives somewhere else, that is an additional trauma. And so these are things that our young people in our community are facing every day. And how does that impact behavior? Those disruptions matter. And so stable housing is absolutely essential to a well-functioning justice system. Well-functioning communities in general, but what you'll find is that it matters to justice as well. And so it is a constant frustration because there's not anything that I can, because I'm a judge, I don't make legislative or policy decisions. So there isn't much that I can do with regard to those issues. But what we do try to do is partner with our community and find resources for families that allow them to be housed and maintain stable housing and equip them with the skills. So if we have parents who are unable to maintain housing because they just don't have the skills or qualifications to maintain jobs to keep stable housing, well, those are things that we can help with as a community. And as a judge, I have an opportunity to help order and put some of those supports in place. But housing, Stable housing, it undermines so much of what we see. Because just think about this, if you can't afford rent, or if you have to make a decision between rent and your mental health medication, or rent and your copay to go see a therapist, those are decisions that families are having to make. But I don't know if those are real decisions, right? Like that's not a real decision. Like you need both of those things. Both of those things need to be able to exist together. So if somebody could help us solve this housing issue, I would say we'd solve a lot of our other issues as well.
And would you say there's anything at the Superior Court level that can be done around housing, that can be done to help those that are maybe facing landlord evictions? Is this a question that you can really talk on? And is this even a part of the Superior Court system to handle?
So actually, landlord-tenant disputes go through our magistrate courts. So just so you're aware of that. And then I will say this, that we have an exceptional magistrate court judge, chief judge, and she is partnered with the community, because again, this is not something that we do in a silo, but she is partnered with our community and our community businesses to provide funds for rental assistance. There is mediation to help landlords and tenants work through some of those issues to hopefully be able to reach a resolution where folks can stay in their homes. So there are opportunities, but like I said, you have to take the time and figure out what the root causes of issues are in order to identify those opportunities for help for the folks in our communities. And our chief judge, magistrate judge, does a wonderful job with that.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to go to a question in the chat from Ms. Delabia Cameron. It says, Judge Miller, what would you say? Oh, sorry, I won't go to that one. You already answered that about young votes. Here's another one. When was the last time that you've spoken with families that have lost loved ones to gun violence?
So, my family has been impacted by the loss of folks to gun violence. So I will say that from a personal perspective. And as a juvenile court judge, I have had young people who were before my court who we lost to gun violence. And it is a hard thing. And so let me say this about being a juvenile court judge. This is oftentimes hard work for a variety of reasons. But when you lose a young person at 14 or 15 years old, you've seen them, in the last month or two, and they seem to be getting things together. And then you find out that they have been a victim on the streets to gun violence. It's difficult. And so people will often ask me, well, what's the answer? I don't know. I will tell you that a lot of the young people that we encounter in juvenile court who have gun charges or access to weapons, those weapons are usually not theirs. A lot of people leave their weapons unsecure in their cars. Our kids tend to, pull doorknobs, and if the car is open, they come in. Sometimes they bust a window out and rummage through the car and take what's in there. And so if there's a way that we can help from a community perspective, and this is not anything legislative or policy, but just being more responsible gun owners, making sure that if we have a weapon, and that is our right as citizens to have a weapon, but secure it properly. If you're gonna leave it in your car, have something that you can keep it secure, because children are children and they're gonna do things that we don't think they should be doing, that are not the best for them. But when they get access to these weapons, I can't imagine I was a little fiery when I was younger. I can't imagine if every time I got into an argument or a dispute, I had a gun at my ready disposal. I would like to think that I would have been better than that. I wouldn't have, but you're talking about young people with access to life-ending weapons out on the streets, getting into whatever types of disputes. And so I prefer if we could keep it out of their hands. I know that is a tall order and a tall task, but I prefer if we could just keep it out of their hands. And one of those ways is to just be a more responsible gun owner.
Thank you for that. We have another question from, looks like Ms. Shay Steed. The question is, what is your perspective on if the juvenile point system is being helpful or hurtful to the rehabilitation effort and actually getting juveniles off the path to jail and prison?
So I get this question a lot too about these points. And I think there's a misconception about what the point system is, at least from the juvenile court perspective. But the way that they're used for young people is to evaluate what level of threat a young person is to the community. And so when we talk about rehabilitation, detention is not the best environment to rehabilitate a young person. And in the way our statute is written for folks under 17 years of age, the goal is for us to have the least restrictive amount of control and supervision. So we use points to determine whether or not a young person is a threat from a property perspective, from a life perspective, to either their life or to the life of someone else. If they're a threat or risk to run, so leave the jurisdiction without being accountable for whatever alleged crime has happened. So those are the things that we use points to evaluate. And so most of the time, if a kid has, been joyriding or maybe pulled a handle and took something out of a car, those are not things that are going to keep a child detained, because again, being detained is not the best way to rehabilitate a child. If we're talking about we want children to be in school, well, if they're detained, they're not in school. If we are talking about stabilizing a family, if the child is separated from their family, that disrupts that. And we know that those are things that actually rehabilitate. If a child has adequate education, has stable housing and home life, those are things that actually cement them to the community and make them more responsible individuals. So I know people get frustrated, and I hear it all the time.
Wait, excuse me. I would just like you to know that I fucking hate niggers.
So that's something, it is a question that we get all the time. But I want folks to know that our goal in juvenile court is to make sure that we are using the least restrictive measures. And that doesn't mean that there isn't, we can put in extra supervision, so probation services, or we can use ankle monitors so that we can keep a tighter eye on the movements of a young person. So we have opportunities to do some things within that point system, but it's not always detention. And I know that frustrates some folks.
Okay, so sorry about that. I will say, I guess now I will ask you, what is a question that you get a lot, or what's something that you say, where are people getting that from all the time, that you see often? You're like, where are they getting that from? I know I'm putting you on the spot here. Like that at all, that you just see often, you're just like, that's peculiar. Where are people getting that from?
Golly, it's a couple of things. I'm like scratching my head. But And maybe this is something. There are things that people don't know that I often scratch my head about. So I'll take a moment to give just a little information and maybe educate some folks. So in Georgia, if you have a juvenile record, it is not automatically sealed when you turn 18. Not everyone knows that. If you have a juvenile record and you complete all of your post disposition or sentencing requirements, you then have to petition the court for the sealing of your record. And so that's not something people know. And so now you all know, and you guys should share that with as many people as you can, because that impacts when a young person applies to college. It impacts scholarships. If you want to go into the military or get a job as a firefighter or a police officer, it impacts those opportunities. And so we want folks to be aware and know that that is an opportunity, an option. It is not going to happen automatically at 18. So there is a step. It's a very simple step. You go down to the juvenile court in whatever jurisdiction you're in and request a petition to seal. And so just know that. So that's one of the things I don't think people are aware of, that I wish people were, so that they could be more proactive in getting those things done.
Thank you for that. I mean, that's certainly something I did not know. So hopefully other people, took that and can share it with other people. It looks like Ms. Pamela Harris has a question. And Ms. Pamela, did you want me to ask the question, or do you want to maybe come off mute and ask it yourself? Okay, I'll go ahead and ask then. Or actually, I'll see you're off mute. We can't hear you. That's okay. I'm going to keep it moving. So if you could, please describe one instance in which you faced an ethical dilemma and how you resolved it.
Unfortunately, I haven't, let me be thoughtful. I have not, as a judge, had any ethical dilemmas. And I think that's good, because I try to steer clear of things that might put that in jeopardy. Now, I will say, as a lawyer, as a practicing trial attorney, there were sometimes when, and I don't know if this is an ethical dilemma, but when I knew that the goal of a client was not necessarily aligned with what the law was, and maybe beyond a comfort zone for me. And I don't know if that's an ethical dilemma, but in those circumstances, there are a couple of approaches. So education is always important. The more you can educate anyone, but in the context of a client-lawyer relationship, the more you can educate your client on the law, potential outcomes, what to expect, the closer you can get to reaching a point where all parties are, we're aligned, our ship is aligned, and we're moving in the same direction. And to the extent that you're not able to do that, then there are choices as lawyers that you get to make about whether or not to continue to represent a client or not. I've never been so at odds that I couldn't represent a client. And what I will tell you is that it has actually probably made me a better lawyer and a judge, because sometimes you have to argue a perspective that you don't necessarily agree with as a lawyer. And I think that broadens your mind and your perspective and your abilities. And I've actually had cases where I had to do that and I won. And actually won up to the Court of Appeals. And it was a lesson for me, because sometimes it is required, the education goes both ways, right? So in educating myself on the issue and the potential for a different perspective, I learned and grew and expanded what the law was. And that's important. It's important to recognize that our law is not a stagnant thing, that it is a living, breathing thing, and that it moves because lawyers take up the opportunity to move it.
Thank you for that. Before I go back into the chat, I'll kind of ask you, you're running for this new office now. What makes you want to do that? What's going to make you excited or happy about doing this every single day?
So in full transparency, I've always wanted to be a Superior Court judge. That has always been my goal, which is why I have been acquiring the skills necessary to perform successfully in that role and to perform with excellence and the highest levels of service in that role. I mentioned all of the different areas of law I've practiced in, the courts I've had the honor to serve on. And so that has always been my goal. The reason I'm running now is very simple, because experience matters. I live in this community. I have a husband and I'm raising a family here. And it is important to me that the judge that sits on the bench, should I ever have to encounter that person, be someone who is knowledgeable of the law, someone who has worked in our community and knows the issues that are facing our community. And when the appointment was made of someone with zero experience, I was like, okay, now is the time. And that is why I'm running at this particular moment. But the reason, like I said, I've always wanted to be a Superior Court judge. And the reason is because it's always been important to me to serve my community where we are. I feel like trial judges have the opportunity to do that on a daily basis and to positively impact the perception, the public perception of our justice system, and to positively impact the lives and circumstances of those who come before the court. And I am prepared and ready to do it.
Thank you for that. And I can kind of piggybacking on that. Are there any role models that you have, any judicial role models that you have now, or even maybe that you did when you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, there are tons. Judges come in a lot of shapes, forms, and sizes. And there are judges who I admire because they are diligent and prepared every single case. And one of those, she actually got promoted and is now a Georgia Supreme Court Justice, Judge LaGrua, always prepared. You could count on the fact that she had read all of your briefing and she knew the law, and the questions that she had were going to be direct and straight to the point. And then there's another judge, magistrate, former chief magistrate down in Clayton County. And she is the one, Judge Juan de Dallas. She took time with everyone who came before, and those are long dockets, those magistrate court dockets, hundreds of cases on them. But she took time to talk to everyone to understand, how can I help? We don't just want to get you in here for an ordinance violation and slam the book at you. We want to know how we can be of service. And watching her learn about people and care for people is something that I took from her. And then there's a current Superior Court Judge, McBurney. He has what I call great bedside manner. People don't think about this in their judges, but just the way he conducts court, where easy to understand for everybody in the room, no matter who you are or your level of education, so that you understand and you know what is going on at all times. And he makes sure you're comfortable. And there are no, like, if you've got a jury trial in front of him, he's gonna ask 100 times, do we need a bathroom break? And it's like, if you're the trial lawyer, you're like, no, judge, I'm in my zone right now, don't take a break. But excellent bedside manner. And so those are little tidbits that I've taken from judges that I've had the opportunity to serve before, argue before. And then, like I said, I'm inspired by all of those lawyers who came through and led the civil rights movement. And I would challenge everybody to just think about this, about the judges in those moments, because we're talking about Southern, probably mostly white men, not probably, actually mostly white male judges who had to make some really difficult decisions and did it despite what the consequences might have been for themselves. And so those are things that I aspire to as a judge, all of those things. And I hope that I bring them. My goal is to bring them to the bench with me every day and to continue as a Superior Court judge to bring those qualities to the bench.
Thank you for that. Sounds like, again, just going back to that experience and watching and learning and pulling.
Absolutely.
That is
Absolutely.
great to hear. Mr. Richard, what you got?
Oh, thank you. All right, so there are actually two questions in the chat. So the first question is, if the Fulton County Commission sets the salary for judges, is it fair to say it is appropriate for judges and commissioners to endorse each other during elections?
So judges can't endorse anyone. That is a part of being a judge. It's one of our judicial things. So we can endorse. But folks have endorsed me. I don't think any of our commissioners have directly endorsed, but other elected officials from around the county have endorsed. And in our process is what our process is. It's an elected process. So there is a need sometimes for that level of reaffirmation for the community to understand who someone is. And so endorsements often reflect the values of the individual that's being endorsed. And so I'm proud that I have been endorsed by the Working Families Party. I am proud that I've been endorsed by Georgia Equality, the Democracy for America, because these are all organizations who are committed to our families and our communities and making them stronger and more inclusive and accessible for all of us.
Thank you so much. And then the next question is, what required parenting skills or programs or counseling would you implement that are not currently occurring as a Superior Court judge, even now as a juvenile judge?
Oh, that's a good one. Listen, parents are hard, especially because parents are hard. You guys know this. Adults, you can't tell a grown person nothing. And so there are lots of things I would love to see for our parents. And we do have some programming in juvenile court. So for example, we have parent aides, and those are folks, and I think this is a wonderful resource. And we don't have a ton of parents who will use it voluntarily. But these are parent aides are folks that come into the home and they'll help you get organized. They'll help you put together a budget, a schedule, help you plan out meals, talk to you about different disciplinary approaches. Like these are people, and they're trained. This is what they're trained to do. And I think that is a wonderful resources that, in addition to, there are all sorts of classes that parents can take about, the different stages of growth and development. So the way we deal with a toddler is not the way we deal with a tween or a teenager in the middle of puberty. And so those are also things that we offer as juvenile court judges. And there's no reason that we can't offer those things to parents and families at a superior court level. Now, whether or not families participate in them, that is another thing. And there, if you're in the context of a court proceeding, there are some contempt powers that can be used by a court, but those are used sparingly, because we also have to think about the family as a whole. Me locking dad up for a couple of days, if he can't work and he can't provide, that destabilizes the family. So there is some push and pull to that, but there are certainly opportunities for educating our parents and making sure, we all, if you're a parent, this, you don't have a baby and they give you a manual and say, hey, this is how you do it, and you'll be successful every time. Every kid is different. Every child has different needs, and needs different skills at different times. And so as a parent, having that extra resource and extra help and support in the community is absolutely vital and helpful and useful. But we just got to get folks more open to doing it.
Thank you very much for that. I see that it is 7:55. So we're almost 5 minutes till 8. I don't know how much time that you have, but you've been with us the entire hour. You have talked a lot. Also, I know that you're busy, so I think maybe it's now is a good time for you to just maybe wrap up and tell us everything.
We got one more question.
Okay, well, sorry, one more question then, and then
Okay.
I'll let you ask that question, Rashard.
All right, thank you. So when dealing with municipal law, when is it appropriate to seek a declarative judgment versus just taking a municipality to court?
Okay, say it one more time for me.
When dealing with municipalities, when is it appropriate to seek a declarative judgment or versus taking the municipality to court?
So that sounds like a legal, like a lawyer question. And so I would hate to give an answer and then an issue like this come before the court. But here's what I'll tell you. You always have the option to come and visit us in court. And if you feel like whatever is not getting resolved, it is okay to come to court. And ideally you get a judge that knows what they're doing and can do it expeditiously, but also really hear your issue and make sure that the resolution is as fair and appropriate as possible. I know that wasn't a direct answer, but because that is kind of a legal advice question, I don't want to try to get into the weeds of it.
So are you able to just explain what the difference between a declarative judgment is versus the full court?
Well, and so to me, it sounds like the same thing. So a declarative judgment is basically the court making a declaration, like to say, hey, this is what you should be doing. And so I don't know what it is a remedy that would be offered by a court. And it could happen in addition to other remedies, but it just would depend on what the circumstances are. And so without getting into the weeds of it, I don't know that I fully understand the underlying question. Okay. But we always have solutions in court. Everybody don't love the solutions that we come up with in court. It's always better to try to resolve it amongst the parties, but declarative judgment is a type of remedy. So the court will lay out, this is the way something should be done. And that could include, it could be included with other remedies, or it could stand alone.
Okay. All right. And then we have one last question from Shay Steve, and then we'll wrap up. And I will unmute you. You should be able to unmute yourself, Ms. Steve.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I was unmuted.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, I was gonna ask this in the chat again, but I think I'm just gonna ask it in live in person. And I was the one that asked you about the parenting question, and you gave great answer, as far as what's currently going on. I don't know if you're aware, last night, some kids, even employing Taco Bell up here not too far from us off of Fulton Industrial, got the shooting. The employee, he was a 17-year-old, also brought an assault rifle to work
Oh,
and had some kind of confrontation with a customer, and they basically shot it, back and forth with each 40 rounds. Same time across the street at the McDonald's, the same thing was going on. So you got two businesses this morning when the sun broke with broken glass everywhere right next door to each other. And some kids in the hospital. I just say all that to say that, I know you're aware of this, how prevalent crime is, and most importantly, juvenile crime. But what I wanted to hear from you was exactly not what currently is in place, but what do you think is missing from helping these kids? Most importantly, helping their parents, if there's a parenting skill issue, to get them back on track and to give these kids what I think is some hope and something to look forward to in the future, because I don't think that's what's going on right now. And to help their parents to be an influence to help them to get back on track. What do you think is missing from the judicial system right now in Fulton County that needs to be in place? Thank you.
yeah, no, thank you. Because I was just having this conversation, and I'll tell you, Ms. Steed, I don't think it's the judicial system. Honestly, I don't. I think what we are missing in our communities is engagement from us. When I grew up, first of all, everybody on my street knew each other, but I had a teacher who lived at one end of the street. I had my nosy neighbor, Miss Belinda, who lived right next door. And Mr. I can't think of his last name right now. He was across the street, catty corner. But if something happened on my porch when my parents weren't there, my mama knew before she even hit the front door. And we are not, I don't know why, but we are not raising our children in that type of community. And quite frankly, I don't know that we are always raising our children. We are giving our kids a lot of autonomy and allowing them to raise themselves, but that's not how it works. Kids don't raise themselves. If you let a kid do whatever they want to do, they're going to make childish decisions, right? Where on earth is a 17-year-old getting the gun to take to work with them? And I don't know, like, what intervention could the court make, or the judicial system, or our law enforcement system to stop that from happening? That is something we've got a lot of work to do as a community. And I'm certain that's not the answer we're looking for, but I don't know that all of this, and honestly, no, that is the answer. The answer is we got to, as communities, step up, because even for our diversion programs to work, our diversion programs don't work without community involvement, because the goal is for our young people to be successful in the communities where they live, which means we have to have businesses willing to hire them. We have to have mentors willing to guide them. We have to have tutors and therapists in the community willing to put those services and supports around them. And right now, that's not what we're doing. And so to the best extent we can, we are ordering that to happen. But I told you, I can't order a parent to do something without threatening contempt powers to force them to do it. I don't know that that's a judicial issue. And I'm with you, because I'm concerned about this generation and potentially losing a lot of young people, because we're not raising kids the same.
Thank you for that. I think Ms. Shea, you have one more thing to add in there.
Hey, yeah, I just real quick. I thank you, Judge, for your response. It's very compassionate. It's a great response. And I totally agree with you that there's nothing really, the police, judicial, the jails, anyone can really do. It goes back to, like you said, the family, the neighbors. God bless that nosy neighbor we all had in the
Right.
neighborhood. Really, they got on our nerves, but
Yes, Lord.
as adults now, we know that they serve
Yeah. It was a
central
purpose.
purpose.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I appreciate that response. And that's all I wanted to say was thank you for a great response.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Steve.
So thank you very much for being here. It is, I think, 8:05. If you can, maybe close us out. Tell us a little bit more. How can we reach you? What should we know? Yeah.
Well, I am Shalonda Miller, and I'm running to become your next Fulton County Superior Court judge because experience matters. I've outlined my legal and professional experience as well as my community experience, and I am ready to serve at the Superior Court level with excellence and professionalism and to deliver the most just and fair results under the circumstances to make sure everyone is seen and truly heard. Early voting has started. In fact, it ends in just 2 days. Get folks to the polls. Get out yourself, but get 5, 10, 15 folks out there as well. Make sure people vote all the way down the ballot and get to the judges and select Shalonda Miller for Fulton County Superior Court Judge. And if you want to get involved, we will be waving signs and doing our get out the vote calling, and we have opportunities for that. You can go to shalondamiller.com, SHALANDA, Miller.com, and sign up to do any of that. And if you find and have the ability to give, that would be super helpful. We are in the final push, and the more we can get my name out and get in front of folks, the better the chances are of getting me elected. Running in and get against an incumbent is hard, but I'm up to the task and I'm ready to take it on because I know how important it is to our communities and our families. So those are the ways that you can help out. I hope that I have earned your vote. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can find my contact information. It's just info@shalondamiller.com, but you can also, if you go to that website, you can click and contact that way as well. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very, very much. I will turn it over to Mr. Richard Snellings.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jareen, for hosting this event tonight. And thank you, Judge Miller, for your participation. I apologize about the interference that we had, but we took care of it rather quickly. So thank you for bearing with us. I just wanted to remind everybody that tomorrow night we will be featuring the Georgia State Superintendent's race. It will be at 7 p.m. So please look out for the invitations for those. So again, thank you everybody for your participation and hearing what Judge Miller had to say, and make sure you vote. So thank you and have a good night.
Have a good night, y'all.
Goodbye.